Hey everyone, this is Dr. Alice Fong and I am here in Lucca, Italy, where it is absolutely gorgeous. Let me show you the view. Yes, this is amazing. I'm here to interview Dr. Michelle Qaqundah. This is her driveway, so I'm gonna walk up here. We're gonna meet with Dr. Qaqundah. We're walking up the driveway. She has her own olive trees and presses her own olive oil. That's pretty amazing. So here we're gonna walk up the path here and say hello. Just look at this. Beautiful. Great. There's Dr. Qaqundah. How are you doing today?
Good, how are you doing?
Good, nice to see you,
Welcome
meet you.
To Lucca.
Thank you.
Nice to see you as well.
Great. All right, so let's get started.
Come on in.
All right. My name is Dr. Alice Fong, and welcome to my Healing Around the World project. Today I am in Lucca, Italy. I'm very excited to introduce to you Dr. Michelle Qaqundah. Welcome, Dr. Michelle Qaqundah.
Thanks for coming and visiting.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. This is a beautiful place. So Dr. Qaqundah is a naturopathic doctor and fellow of the American Board of Naturopathic Oncology. She is a past director of naturopathic medicine at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America and past president of the Oncology Association of Naturopathic Doctors. She currently sees patients in her private practice in Lucca, Italy, and is the founder of the Mediterranean Life Wellness, an organization focused on education regarding the Mediterranean diet and lifestyle through international lecturing, medical journal articles, and hands-on experience during a week-long Tuscan wellness retreat. That sounds awesome. Welcome. Great. So, Dr. Qaqundah, how did you decide to become a doctor? What brought you to this path?
Well, I come from a medical family, and so I was always interested in medicine. I also grew up next door to a family where both of the parents were chiropractors, and the grandmother was an elder wise woman and a health advocate. And I really do feel that both of those families have really had an effect on who I am today and the choices that I've made. When I first started college, I did start with a pre-med degree, thinking about conventional medical school. But once I discovered that there was an option for an evidence-based, scientifically founded path of studying natural medicine, it just became an obvious choice for me. So I changed paths.
Awesome. Great. And how did you decide on Italy to begin your practice? Or continue your practice? Amore, yes.
It's not where I started my practice. I was, at the time that I met my now husband, I was a director of naturopathic medicine at Cancer Treatment Centers of America. And I loved my team, and I loved what we were able to accomplish for our patients, as well as integrating naturopathic medicine into our new hospital and our medical community in Philadelphia. But, eventually my husband convinced me to move here. In the end, I think it was really that we both agreed that it would be the best place for us to raise our children.
Wonderful. Great. And it is a beautiful place, I have to say. I'm just in awe of the scene.
We were happy here.
Oh, well, great. And so what types of conditions do you see and treat, and what's your approach to treating them?
Yeah, so I see a lot of gastrointestinal complaints, women's health, inflammatory conditions, and cancer. My approach to treating has changed a lot since I've moved to Italy. Health is a way of life here, and my patients aren't used to taking pills. So most of my patients who come in to see me are not taking any medications or any supplements when they first come in to see me. And so, when I first got here, my previous practice, I did use a lot of nutritional supplements. I would talk to patients about, for example, I think you should take a fish oil supplement. And they would say, okay, great. For how many days? And so gradually I've kind of evolved my practice to using less pills, less nutritional supplements, and more dietary and lifestyle modifications. And I've really found that I'm able to have a lot more of an effect on somebody's life by making one or two small modifications to their diet or lifestyle that that become a habit for them for the rest of their lives, than by getting them to adopt an aggressive supplement regimen for 6 months that they aren't able to maintain long term. So that part of my practice has changed a lot. But also my practice has evolved to include hands-on experiential learning. So I've created a new venture. It's called Mediterranean Life Wellness, as you mentioned when you introduced me. And this is focused more on education of the Mediterranean diet and lifestyle. So, I've been lecturing internationally. I've been writing articles for medical journals. But the best part of it is having some hands-on experience during our week-long retreats that are held here in Tuscany. So participants are able to get in the kitchen with me and get their hands dirty, learning how to cook the Mediterranean diet. We eat the Mediterranean diet during the whole week. And it's not just about the diet, it's also about the lifestyle as well. And so they're also able to enjoy outdoor physical activity, and we do it at beautiful places like Florence and Cinque Terre and Lucca, and of course we have to visit the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Of course. We indulge in hydrotherapy at a historic natural thermal spa. We taste biodynamic wines and Chianti, and we do it all from a beautiful Tuscan villa that's very amenable to a social atmosphere. So we do it all in a very social environment, and I love it. I love to see how hands-on experience can really make an impact onto people's lives long term.
That sounds like an amazing experience. I would love to be part of that sometime.
You should join us.
It sounds amazing, and I absolutely agree that to be proactive in your health and make those lifestyle and nutritional changes is really how we see impact and change, and that it doesn't have to be like a supplement you take for X amount of time. It should be like a life change over time.
Absolutely.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. Yes. And do you see any, you mentioned how practicing in Italy is a bit different than practicing in the US. Are there any other differences you see in the attitudes about health in the different countries here?
Absolutely. Health here is part of the culture. It's a way of life. Being healthy is the way that people carry on their lives here. Happiness, for example, is prioritized. Italians, they cherish the joys of life. And what are some of those joys of life? Well, food. Italians cherish food. Most families have a family garden. Most families have enough olive trees for enough oil for the family for the year, and maybe even enough grapes for family wine. They celebrate food. There's so much time that's invested in food, talking about food, preparing food from fresh ingredients, cooking from scratch, and enjoying food in a social environment. The food is, they're eating the Mediterranean diet. So they're eating very, foods that are very rich in nutrient dense ingredients, like, for example, fruits and vegetables, extra virgin olive oil, whole grains, fish. And it's considered, the Mediterranean diet, to be one of the healthiest diets in the world. There's a lot of research showing that it's beneficial for cardiovascular health, for prevention of diabetes and neurodegenerative disorders, as well as a growing body of evidence showing that it's very good for prevention of cancer, primary and secondary prevention of cancer. So, the food is an important aspect of people staying healthy here. And not just food. People are very physically active here in Italy. If you go into town, you'll see that everybody's walking or biking.
Yes, I did a lot of walking. Yes, that's great.
If you walk through my neighborhood, you'll see 90-year-olds gardening.
Wow.
There's a little old lady that lives in our neighborhood, and she bikes to town in her woolen suit, and she's carrying her groceries on her handlebars on the way back. Even it's raining, she's got one hand with an umbrella. This woman is amazing. The older folks here are healthy, and they're active, and they're also very socially engaged. And I think that's a third aspect of what contributes to the health of the Italians. Italians are very social people. There's always time to chat. If you run into your friend in town, which you inevitably do because you're both walking or on your bikes, right? It's always time to duck into a cafe and have a quick coffee and catch up. Everybody's included in life here. Kids are welcome everywhere. People have asked me, well, if you're going to reserve for dinner, can you make sure it's a kid-friendly place when, my family's visiting? Or I said, kids are welcome everywhere here. We take them to the bar. They're a part of our life here. And not just kids, but also, the elders here in Italy are very included. Most often they're living with their children's families. They're helping with the grandkids, which is great. They're very involved in the life of the family. And the older men will walk down to the local cafe and they'll play cards and dominoes with their friends all morning long. And the older women will generally walk down to the local market and chat with the other women, in the morning. So, people are very engaged here. I've heard from so many people, not just patients, but also my friends. My dad, he was doing okay, as he was getting older, until he couldn't walk down to the cafe and spend his mornings with his friends. And that's when we really started to notice that things went downhill. And I've heard that from so many people here, that social connection was really something that kept them engaged in this life.
Yes.
So I think those three aspects of the culture here really embody what health is here in Italy.
Wow. Yeah, I feel ready to move to Italy now. Great. So my last question for you is, the part of this project, or the purpose of this project, is to help people who don't have access to doctors get a little window and advice from doctors from all around the world. So if you could offer a piece of advice or wisdom to someone who wasn't able to fly out to Italy for this retreat, what would you like to tell them?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a really, I really respect this project that you're doing. I think this is a great endeavor. I think that really the best way that people can avoid needing to go to the doctors is, as much as possible, to stay healthy. And, as naturopathic doctors, we are big advocates of prevention and health advocacy.
Absolutely.
And I do think that the Italians and the Mediterranean culture in general have a lot to offer people in terms of helping them develop habits and incorporate habits long-term into their life that can help them stay healthy. I do think that food is a big, important component of that. The Mediterranean diet is an excellent example of a diet that is fresh, that's made from scratch, with little to no processed foods. I think that's an important aspect of the diet. Even if you can't use, if you can't get your hands on, the ingredients specifically of the Mediterranean diet, I think that the important aspects of it are fresh foods, and cooking things from scratch, and really avoiding processed foods. But if you can get your access to ingredients for the Mediterranean diet, most of which are easily accessible and not expensive, I would encourage to follow the Mediterranean diet. And by that I mean focusing mostly on nutrient-rich foods such as vegetables and fruits, using extra virgin olive oil as your main source of fat, which has a lot of research and has a lot of health benefits, just chock full of polyphenols and the good types of fats. Eating whole grains, or as much whole grain products as possible, and limiting processed foods, including processed grains. Eating fish as often as is possible, but not just eating fish. Eating white meat instead of red meat. Occasional red meat is fine too. Eating tomato-based sauces that are simmered in a healthy fat like olive oil, making the carotenoids more bioavailable. So it's just a little culinary trick that you can, as you're cooking with sauces or anything that's rich in carotenoids. And by carotenoids, these are special antioxidants that are very colorful, like tomatoes or carrots. Making sure that you're adding some olive oil or other healthy cooking fat while it's cooking, so that it makes those fat-soluble nutrients more easily absorbed by your body. Eating lots of legumes. Legumes are very inexpensive, and they're a great source of a healthy protein, and really help us feel satiated and full, and able to make it to the next meal without snacking. These are some of the basic tenets that people can incorporate into their diet, as well as the others that I mentioned in terms of the lifestyle. Is staying active. Make it a part of your lifestyle. Doesn't necessarily mean you join an expensive gym and have these aggressive workouts. It could just mean that you take your bike places, or you walk places. Finding ways to just stay active doesn't necessarily have to be exercise. and also being social, keeping people in your lives, and taking the time and taking those little breaks to spend time with the people that you care about.
Great. Wonderful. So Dr. Qaqundah has a Mediterranean lunch cooking up for us today, and so we're going to be going into the kitchen here in a moment and talking about that. All right.
Hi. Welcome to my kitchen. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a simple dish that you can prepare at home that can really change with the seasons, that can really change according to your preferences, and makes for a nice, hearty, healthy meal that, if adopted as one of your meals per day, can really increase how healthy you are and really help get you on the road towards the Mediterranean diet. So if you notice over here, I've left a few ingredients that I've used in this soup that we're going to be making. I have here my favorite ingredient, and something that is very instrumental to the Mediterranean diet, which is extra virgin olive oil. Now, this olive oil is from our own trees, and so I could tell you that it is pure extra virgin olive oil. I watched it be pressed by the large stone that they used to press olive oil in this area. And extra virgin olive oil is something that's important to find extra virgin, because when it's extra virgin, it means it's the first press of the olives. It hasn't had any solvents used to extract what's left over from pressing for extra virgin olive oil, and it's the highest in those health benefiting polyphenols. So when you find extra virgin olive oil, it should be a dark yellow or even kind of a greenish color like this, and it should have a nice rich flavor and even a little bitterness, which is one of those polyphenols that's found in the olive oil. I also have some whole grains here. This is farro, which is a whole grain that's grown here locally. And I have some tomato concentrate here. I have some garlic, and I have some fresh herbs. Now, Tomatoes are very high in carotenoids, and as I mentioned before, when you're cooking with high carotenoid foods, it's important to cook with a little bit of fat to help make them more absorbable. And tomatoes are just chock full of antioxidants. And so I like to tell people, as you're cooking, regardless of what you're cooking, make sure that you're adding to your foods. So today I made this soup, and I added a little bit of tomato concentrate because it's adding more nutrients. The more nutrient-dense foods that you can add to whatever you're cooking, the healthier it will be. The more antioxidants it will have, the more anti-inflammatory effect it will have, and the more nutrients it will have for your body. So I generally add a little bit of tomato concentrate to a lot of the foods that I use. For example, if you're making a pot of rice, add a couple of tablespoons of tomato concentrate, or fresh tomatoes if you'd like, a little olive oil to get the most out of those tomatoes. Add some aromatic herbs. Aromatic herbs have a lot of antioxidant action as well, and some of them also anti-inflammatory. So adding a little sage or rosemary to your foods increases the benefits of those foods. And garlic is also very important. Garlic has a lot of great research, a lot of health benefiting properties that can be healthy for the heart, that can be healthy for cancer, that can be healthy for a lot of things. Now, what I tell people, what I recommend people to do is the first thing they do when they come into the kitchen is to peel and chop their garlic. Because garlic, the part that helps us the most with garlic, needs to be activated. And we activate it by breaking those cells and releasing the enzymes that convert the pre-allicin to allicin. And it takes a little bit of time to do that. So, first thing you do when you come to the kitchen is you chop your garlic, you put it to the side. By the time you get your other ingredients out of the fridge, wash them, prepare them, by the time the garlic hits the pan, it's been about 20 minutes, which is plenty of time for that action to happen. So it gives you a little bit more out of the ingredients that you're using. And as you're making that rice, throw in a couple cloves of garlic too. Now, over here, we have a nice soup bubbling. And I'll tell you what I did. Turn the heat down a little bit. So here, you'll see I've got a nice hearty soup that has been bubbling away on the stove. And what I've done here is I've just taken whatever vegetables are in season. So, for example, most Italian dishes start with a trinity of onions, carrots, and celery. And I always start with a few cloves of garlic as well, because I know that's something that's going to add some additional health benefit. And then I've just cut up all of the vegetables that are currently that I find fresh at the farmer's stand. So today I put some, in addition to the carrots, celery, and onions, I put some winter squash. I put some leeks. I put some cauliflower, and what else did I put? I put a little bit of zucchini. That's not as much in season right now, but I did find some at the farmer's stand, so I went ahead and put that in there too. But as the seasons change, we're just coming out of winter now, spring is starting. As the seasons change, the ingredients in my soup change. And this is a soup that I make every 2 to 3 days, and is generally our lunch or our dinner, depending on which is our lighter meal of the day. The other thing that we add is some legumes. Now these legumes are an antique bean that comes from our area, and I have a couple of different kinds of antique beans in here. This one comes from the Valley of the Garfagnana, and this is another one that's similar but a little bit different. And then I also have some just normal Barlotti beans, which are kind of like the Italian pinto beans, I would say, that you see in a lot of cooking. Adding legumes adds your source of protein and makes the meal more, keep you full longer. If anybody's ever had just a meal of only vegetables, you feel maybe hungry after a couple of hours. Well, that's because you need a little bit more protein in the meal and also some healthy fat. So I did add some extra virgin olive oil to this when I started cooking it, because you want to cook some fats with the food to increase the bioavailability of the carotenoid containing vegetables in here. And I've also added that farro that I showed you earlier. So it's not as easy to see here because it's been cooking together, so the grains have kind of swelled up. But adding some whole grains to the dish also helps to balance the whole dish out. So ideally, we have each meal vegetables with each meal, with each lunch and dinner, and some source of protein and some source of complex carbohydrates. And this meal, the soup has all of those things in it, so it could be a complete meal all just by itself. Now, as I was cooking it, I did add not only water, but I also added some of that tomato concentrate. Like I said, I'm always trying to add a little extra nutrients to it. I did add a little bit of fresh herbs from my garden, and I also did add some of the bone broth concentrate that I make about once a month, freeze into jars, and add a scoop or two into each of the dishes that I make. The way that I like to prepare this to get the most flavor out of the vegetables is to initially put that heat the olive oil with the garlic, saute the vegetables a little bit to bring out the flavors. You could just add the water directly, and you'll have a good soup. But if you're able to saute the vegetables before you add the water in the olive oil on a medium-low temperature for about 10 minutes, it does bring out the flavors and makes the soup have a more well-balanced taste to it. And then I add the water, and then I add the legumes and the grains. The legumes I soak beforehand so they don't take too long to cook. Of course, you don't add the salt initially, so the legumes don't stay hard. And if you forgot to soak your beans ahead of time, add a little baking soda to the water when you're soaking it, and soak it in warm water, and it'll soften up the skins of the beans a little faster. Rinse it well before you add them in, though. Now that everything's cooked, I'm going to go ahead and add some high quality salt that has a lot of different minerals, not just sodium, to the soup. And it's not a very salty salt, so I'm a little bit more generous with it. And then I mix that in and just let it cook for another minute or so to let the salt get into all the food that's in there. You see there's a lot of good veggies in here. And it could be cooked a little bit less, but we were chatting earlier, so it cooked a little bit longer maybe than I would have normally, but it's fine too. And I'll tell you, this soup, even my son loves it, but I'll tell you the trick that I use to feed it to my son. His portion, I blend it. And it's a nice, thick, creamy soup with the legumes. It makes it nice and creamy, and then I pour some olive oil into it as I'm blending it, and a little bit more on top. We put olive oil on top of pretty much everything around here, and he'll eat it that way, and he loves it. So that's a little trick for kids. So we're just going to scoop some of this soup into the bowl. I'd like to get a little of that delicious broth. It's got some of the bean broth and all those good flavors together. And then it's generally served with a nice healthy drizzle of extra virgin olive oil and some fresh pepper. And that olive oil helps us stay full longer so we can make it to the next meal without snacking. And here you've got a nice bowl of soup, which could be its own meal, maybe with a piece of whole grain toast, maybe even with a little piece of cheese, but in general, this could be your meal. That would be a nice, healthy complement to your diet. Buon appetito!